Sweetbaby Inc. bankrupt the Alan Wake 2 studio developer Remedy Games. It's looking like it's getting close, but not exactly. And I think this is a thing that we're hearing from Alan Wake 2 developer Remedy Games, where they're saying they sold over 1.3 million copies of Alan Wake 2 since its October release, all the way up to its January monthly quarterly sales figures. And I think that's the thing that we're seeing here now, where they're saying they've sold a lot of copies. They already made over $80 million in net sales, but that is not leading to profitability, at least for Remedy Games, where you take into consideration the overall production costs of this game, the marketing costs, and of course the distribution costs, which is something people usually casually forget is a main thing. You have to sell your product through retailers and through different modes of streaming services where you actually are able to sell your game, things like Steam, and I think they get their cut too as well. So if you include distribution costs, it has a high order of money it needs to make to reach a profitability or break even. And I think that is the case of the developer Remedy Games, saying we didn't recoup our development costs totally yet, and it's going to take a while. People are projecting into 2024, but looking at some of the numbers, I'm saying Sweetbaby Inc. and its influence on the game may have ruffled the feathers of enough fans where Remedy Games might be put in a tight spot. I don't know if it's going to be bankruptcy, but it might be in a situation where it's going to have to scale back on a few games. Even though I hear in the article they're saying, yeah, we're doing good enough where we're confident we'll break even. And I'm just hearing them say they're confident that they'll break even within a year or so. That is just giving me a sense of unsuredness of the situation. If they're just aiming for breaking even instead of profitability within a few years, that is telling me this is not getting enough traction as they hope. They spent their most money in this game, and I think some of the praises they got from local media, from games journalists, for their cinematic approach and neglecting the main character Alan Wake for a saga kind of race swap character is not gonna turn itself into profitability. It led to a lot of positive reviews and praising from social media, but a lot of the people praising this game are not actually playing the game. And I think that's the main thing we have here with this game, where we're getting unlimited praise for the game and is selling at a rate where it can make money eventually, but not at the rate where it's gonna meet profitability standards within a few years. And I think that is the case. We're seeing now the influence of these consultancy firms like Sweetbaby Inc. If you don't know, Sweetbaby Inc. is a consultancy firm that comes in and has an overall anti-creativity approach to developing video games, where it's not about the story, it's not about narrative arcs and character development, it's about the racial dynamics and minority class inclusion efforts of that consultancy group. It doesn't matter your story, they're just looking for diversity and equity within your game and not actually overall developing your game. So it's an anti-creativity group, and they were plugged into Alan Wake. They proudly state they dealt with narrative design and overall diversity efforts in the game, and that's why you have the race swap Saga Anderson, who was originally a European blonde hair white woman, is now a black woman. This is where you get all the words of affirmation to Saga Anderson endlessly, with saying she's amazing without any character or story development to prove the case. And that's where you have the neglect of Alan Wake in his own game. And I think this is something we see consistently in Hollywood, where we have these big label characters like Luke Skywalker, like Picard, famous characters attached to large franchises, and then you have these predictable bait and switch scenarios where some random female character you don't care about is taking the lead, and she's the main focus of the entire story. We saw this happening even with development stories within Marvel Cinematic Universe. We saw that with Doctor Strange, we saw that with Secret Invasion, we saw that with Loki season 1. We see this consistently within the modern entertainment sphere, this bait and switch strategy, and it seems like that was the case for Alan Wake 2, and some of the fans complained about that. And I think that is the biggest thing holding back this from actually making a quick return and recouping its development costs, where I think it probably needs to make a smooth $150 million to actually break even, and that's after making over $80 to $90 million in a few months. But that is the initial sale run where people are out to get Alan Wake 2. Now we're in the slow crawl to a number like 2.8 million copies sold to break even, and they need to double what they have right now. And of course, I think they can meet the expectation of maybe reaching 2 million by the end of the year, but that's not nearly enough to recoup the entirety of the cost and the budget of this game. And I think that's what we're seeing here, where this studio, it's not going to go bankrupt, but it is being affected by some of its decisions, neglecting Alan Wake in his own game, and of course swapping some of the characters, not based on narrative or story structure, but because you got a consultancy firm that's just there to disrupt your game over diversity elements. And I think those things are probably harming it, but I think the main thing, just Alan Wake 2 just being taking a backseat in his own game. And I think that is a thing that we're seeing here overall. I think eventually, probably in 3 years, it's going to probably reach a break even or profit point, but this is a gaming industry. You're constantly releasing games, and if they release another bomb at the same situation, I know they're working on Control and Max Payne remake, so they probably have a safety knowing that Max Payne remake may make money no matter what, so they can rely on that. So I think with that in mind, they probably won't go bankrupt, but they're in a tight situation right now, and you don't want to be in a tight situation where the game that you spent so much money on is slowly crawling to breaking even, and it's going to take multiple years to get to that point. You want to be in a situation where the second day you already broke even and you're on to profitability for the next 10-15 years. That's not the case for most studios, but usually within the year that is the case that you want for your video gaming studio to break even within the year. And they're saying it's going to break even is a possibility within a year, but that's just from the studio itself. It has to be positive about the results, and them even saying it's going to take all the way to the end of the year, it has me thinking, okay, it's probably into next year, because that's the optimistic standard they're giving out there. It's going to be at the end of this year. I'm like, no, it's already, sales are probably already slowing to a crawl. The fan base, they that actually want to play Alan Wake 2, they played it. You want to draw in a new fan base, and I think that's why they brought in Sweetbaby Inc. to draw in a new fan base. Sweetbaby Inc. specializes in bringing attention to your game to games journalists, and maybe getting your attention for a Game of the Year awards because you included diversity and inclusion elements in the game. That's for the broad base appeal to news journalists and overall award ceremonies. It's not going to attract the gamers. So I think that's the main thing people have confused with Sweetbaby Inc. It's not going to make your game better. It's probably going to make it worse, but you're going to have a lot of critics and reviews giving it thumbs up because it has their politics in the game. I think that is the essential thing that we're seeing here with Sweetbaby Inc. and its consultancy firm when it comes to these games. They're not going to lead your game to profitability. I think that we're seeing that with Spider-Man 2, even though Spider-Man 2 is off the back of one of the best games, and it is going to make a profit, but it's going to make way less than Spider-Man 1, at least half as less as Spider-Man 1, and it's going to put Spider-Man 3 in a position where it may not be as profitable as Spider-Man 2. So Sweetbaby Inc. is not there to make a profitable game for you. It's there for you to pop your chest out and say, I am a moral, stand-up, progressive individual, so praise my game journalists and award ceremonies and say that I made something stunning and brave. And I think that's what they got, but it's not leading to an overall profitable outcome, at least in the short term and near term. Maybe in the long term, they might break even, and that's going to take a few years, and that's not where you want to be as a company, at least a video game developer. You want to at least make a profit within a year, and I don't think that's going to be the case for Alan Wake 2. It's going to take about 2 to 3 years in total to get to that point, and I don't want to be in that position as a game developer, because game developing companies are falling and dropping off like flies and closing down. I don't want Remedy Games to do that, and hearing that they're working on a Max Payne 1 and 2 remake, and probably Sweetbaby Inc. is probably going to have influence over that, that is making me feel a little trepidation over any remakes now. But you tell me what you think about the situation. Sweetbaby Inc. harmed Alan Wake's 2 ascension to actually profitability. I think that's the case, because I think that overweighing influence on the overall design of Saga Anderson. They race swapped her, and they pulled the story away from Alan Wake for a considerable amount of time, and I think that's probably a bad thing to pull away from the main star of your franchise. And we saw what happened to Last of Us 2 and Joel. That destroyed the Naughty Dog and the Last of Us franchise. So I think it's just a dumb thing to do, but it happens now in entertainment. But you leave your comments, tell me what you think about the situation. Like, share, subscribe. This is Wagner Knows Why. Catch you next time.